गुड मॉर्निंग स्टूडेंट्स। आज हम सोशल साइंस के पॉलिटिकल साइंस के चैप्टर फर्स्ट पावर शेयरिंग के इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस करने जा रहे हैं। फर्स्ट वी विल डिस्कस शॉर्ट आंसर टाइप क्वेश्चंस ऑफ 1 मार्क्स। विच लैंग्वेज वाज रिकॉग्नाइज्ड एज द ओनली ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज ऑफ श्रीलंका इन 1956? Sinhala. Question number 2. Apart from the central and the state governments, which is the third type of government practiced in Belgium? Community government. Question number 3. Define majoritarianism. Majoritarianism is rule by majority community by disregarding the needs and wishes of the minority community. What measure was adopted by the democratically elected government of Sri Lanka to establish Sinhala supremacy? In 1956, an act was passed to make Sinhala the official language. The government followed preferential policies favoring Sinhala applicants for university positions and government jobs. What is the language spoken by the people residing in the Wallonia region of Belgium? People residing in Wallonia region of Belgium speak French. What is meant by the system of checks and balances? The horizontal distribution of power ensures that power is shared among different organs of the government, the legislature, executive, and judiciary. It allows different organs of government placed at the same level to exercise different powers. The horizontal distribution of power is also called a system of checks and balances. This system ensures that none of these organs can exercise unlimited power. Each organ checks the other. Define the term ethnic. Ethnic means a social division based on shared culture and common descent. People belonging to an ethnic group need not have the same religion and nationality. What is vertical division of power? When power is shared among governments at different levels, that is, the union or the central government, the state government, and the municipality and panchayat at the lower level, this division of power involving higher and lower levels of government is called the vertical division of power. What is the official religion of Sri Lanka? Buddhism is the official religion of Sri Lanka. After independence, Sri Lanka witnessed the supremacy of which community? Sri Lanka witnessed the supremacy of Sinhala community after independence. Now the short answer type questions. Do you think that the steps taken by Sri Lankan government to establish the supremacy of Sinhalas were justified, be long lasting? Give your viewpoint. The steps taken by the Sri Lankan government to establish Sinhala's supremacy cannot be justified as long lasting because of the following reasons. These steps ignored the interests of a minority community. Even the basic rights were not given to them. Discrimination based on religion and language further deprived other communities in Sri Lanka. Repeated denial of the demand further developed distrust and ignited the situation that resulted in a civil war, causing triple setback to Sri Lankan social, cultural, and economic life. Sharing of powers make a country more powerful and united. Do you agree with the statement? Why? Or the question can be asked, power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. Justify the statement. A democratic rule involves sharing power with those affected by its exercise. Power sharing ensures that people have the right to be consulted and have equal participation in the government. In a democracy, each individual has a say in governance through their elected representatives. This is the essence of power sharing that grants equal rights to equal citizens. Sharing of power ensures that respect for diversity and desire for living together become a shared ideal amongst different communities in a country. It actually makes the country united and the administration easier. Prudential reasons stress that power sharing would bring out better outcomes by helping to reduce the possibility of any conflict between the social groups. Power sharing is a good way to ensure the stability of political order through unity of the nation. Explain two reasons as to why power sharing is desirable. There are many reasons as to why power sharing is important in the democracy. The following are the two main sets in which the reasons can be broadly divided. Prudential reason. Power sharing helps to reduce the possibility of conflict between social groups. It is a good way to ensure the stability of political order as social conflict often leads to violence and political stability. Moral reason. Power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. The concept of democracy is a system of government of the people, by the people, and for the people, which emphasizes on the distribution of power among people. It involves sharing powers with those affected by its exercise and who have to live its effects, so that the people would be consulted on how they are to be governed. Why is the ethnic composition of Belgium complex? Belgium is a small country in Europe having a population of a little over 1 crore. 59% of the country's total population lives in the Flemish region and speak Dutch language. About 40% people live in Wallonia region and speak French. Remaining 1% of the Belgians speak German. Whereas in the Belgian capital, Brussels, 80% of the population is French speaking and 20% is Dutch speaking. What is majoritarianism? Is it wrong if a majority community is in a country rules? Give reasons to justify your answer. हमने मेजॉरिटेरियनिज्म का डेफिनेशन पहले भी लिखी हुई है, आप वो भी लिख सकते हैं. नाउ अदर क्वेश्चन देखिए कि कैसे क्या ये रॉन्ग होगा कहना कि जो मेजॉरिटी है वही कंट्री की रूल करती है और इसके रीजंस जस्टिफाई करने. ए बिलीव दैट द मेजॉरिटी कम्युनिटी शुड बी एबल to rule a country in whichever way it wants by disregarding the wishes and needs of the minority is majoritarianism. Yes, it is wrong if the majority community in a country rules. The very idea of power sharing has emerged in opposition to the notions of undivided political power. A positive attitude towards diversity and willingness to accommodate it is good for democracy. Power in the hands of one community will make the other community feel marginalized, deprived, and discriminated. The struggle against each inequalities sometimes take the path of conflict and defiance of state power as in Sri Lanka. Now, what is majoritarianism? It's the same question. How has it increased the feeling of alienation among Sri Lankan Tamils? Explained with examples. Now, majoritarianism is a concept which specifies a belief that majority community should be able to rule a country in whichever way it wants. In this type of rule, the majority community disregards the wishes and needs of the minority community. The majoritarian concept has increased the strong feeling of alienation among Sri Lankan Tamils after a series of majoritarian measures adopted by the democratically elected government in Sri Lanka after its independence in 1948 to establish Sinhala supremacy. In 1956, an act was passed to recognize Sinhala as the only official language, thus disregarding Tamil. The government followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala applicants for university positions and government jobs. A new constitution advocated that the state shall protect and foster Buddhism. Compare the different ways in which Belgian and the Sri Lankan have dealt with the problems of cultural diversity. How have Belgium and Sri Lanka dealt with the question of power sharing differently? Now, this is the comparison between both the countries. we will be dealing with this. Both Belgium and Sri Lanka are democracies, yet they have dealt with the problem of cultural diversity very differently. Belgium leaders realized that for the unity of country, it is important to respect the feelings and interests of the different communities. The constitution prescribes that the number of Dutch and French speaking people shall be equal in the central government. Both Dutch and French communities share power on an equal basis at the center. Along with the state government, both communities have a third kind of government called community government, which decides on cultural, education, and language related issues. Between 1970 and 1993, the constitution was amended 4 times to enable all linguistic groups to live together within the same country. Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, there are two major communities, the Sinhalese speaking 74% and the Tamil speaking 18%. The majority community, the Sinhalese, have forced their domination over Tamils, refusing to share power. Both communities have lived in tension as the Sinhalese have denied political, educational, religious, employment, and economic rights to the Tamil, leading to civil war. In 1956, the government passed an act to recognize Sinhala as the only official language, thus disregarding Tamil. Bring out to any two sharp contrast between Belgium and Sri Lankan democracy. And now the first question can be answered like this: Sri Lanka and Belgium are both democratic countries, yet have a very diverse social setup. Both the countries have adopted very different approaches. When it comes to power sharing, Belgium produced an ideal example of democratic system. It adopted the policy of accommodation of social and ethnic divisions. On the other hand, Sri Lanka also adopted democratic system but followed majoritarian policies. Under the Belgian model of democracy, power was shared among two ethnic groups. Sri Lanka favored the interests of the majority Sinhala community. In Belgium, both the groups have equal share in working of government, but in Sri Lanka, the minority community was isolated. To maintain political stability and equality, both representation was provided to both the groups. Apart from that, community government of both the ethnic groups have also existed at the local level. Sri Lanka, however, had no such arrangement. Belgium constitution was amended 4 times before arriving at a final draft to prevent civil strife. In Sri Lanka, majoritarianism led to civil war for 20 long years. How do Belgium's power sharing path different from any other country? Explain the 4 elements in the Belgian power sharing model. Why do we find the Belgian model very complicated? How has it helped to prevent conflict and division of the country on linguistic lines? The power sharing arrangement made by the Belgian leaders were different and more innovative than any other country. To recognize the existence of regional differences and cultural diversities, they amended their constitution 4 times between 1970 and 1993. The major element of the Belgian model are: constitution prescribes that the number of Dutch and French speaking ministers shall be equal in the central government. No single community can take decisions unilaterally. The state government are not subordinate to the central government. Brussels, the capital, has a separate government where both the communities have equal representation. A third kind of government, community government, is elected by people belonging to one language community, Dutch, French, and German speaking, no matter where they live. This government can decide on cultural, educational, and language related issues. Explain how Belgium was able to solve her ethnic problems, or explain the ways by which Belgium has accommodated the existing regional differences and cultural diversities, or highlight the measures adopted by the Belgium constitution for the prevention of conflicts in Belgium. Answer. When the Belgian leaders recognized the existence of regional differences and cultural diversities, they amended their constitution 4 times in order to accommodate these differences. Following are the ways in which Belgium has accommodated the existing regional differences and cultural diversities. Equal number of ministers. The government of Belgium has equal number of Dutch and French speaking ministers. This has been done to give equal powers to the majority and the minority speaking language speaking groups. Setting up of community government. A third kind of government named the community government is introduced in addition to the central and the state government. This government has the power regarding cultural, educational and lingual issue. This government comprises members from all the three communities, Dutch speaking, French speaking and German speaking. Fair share of power. Many powers of the central government has been given to the state government of the two regions of the country. The state governments are not subordinate to the central government but are independent. Equal representation. In the state government of Brussels, the capital city, both the French and Dutch speaking communities have equal representation. Explain the consequences of the majoritarian policies adopted by the Sri Lankan government. श्रीलंका, ये आपका जो शॉर्ट आंसर टाइप क्वेश्चन था ये उसी टाइप का है, तो आप उधर से भी लिख सकते हैं, बट अगर ये 5 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन आता है तो यू कैन इलेबोरेट इट लाइक दिस. Sri Lanka emerged as an independent country in 1948. The democratically elected government adopted a series of majoritarian measures to establish Sinhala supremacy. Consequences of these majoritarian policies. The Sri Lankan Tamils felt that none of the major political parties led by the Buddhist Sinhala leaders were sensitive to their language and culture, and the government policies denied them equal political rights, which led to increased feeling of alienation among them. The Sri Lankan Tamils felt that the constitution denied their equal rights in politics, in getting jobs, and ignored their interests. The relation between the Tamil and Sinhala communities became extremely strained as a result. The Sri Lankan Tamils launched parties and struggles for the recognition of Tamil for regional autonomy and equality of opportunity in every field. Therefore, the measures adopted by the government to establish Sinhala supremacy led to distrust between the two communities, which turned the widespread conflict into a civil war. As a result, thousands of people of both communities were killed and many families were forced to leave the country as refugees and lost their livelihoods. Describe any three provisions of the act that was passed in Sri Lanka in 1956 to establish supremacy, Sinhala supremacy. The following are the majoritarian measures adopted by the Sri Lankan government to establish Sinhala supremacy. Now, इसमें आप सेम लिख सकते हैं जो आपने पहले लिखा हुआ है, सेम उसी चीज को आप यहाँ पे लिख सकते हैं. In year 1956, an act was passed which established Sinhala as the official language to be used in Sri Lanka, disregarding the minority group of Tamil. The passing of this act created a feeling of alienation among the minority group, that is, Sri Lankan Tamils, and they started to feel left out from the society. The government had started adopting and formulating government policies that favor the Sinhala people in government jobs and for university positions, which made the Sri Lankan Tamils feel ostrated. The Sri Lankan government further proclaimed that they shall foster and protect only Buddhism as the state religion and refuse to cater to any other religion disregarding the religion of Sri Lankan Tamils. Describe the demands of Sri Lankan Tamils. How did they struggle for their demands? The following are the demands of Sri Lankan Tamils. Recognition of Tamil language, and the Tamil should be given equal status with that of Sinhala language and should be added as an official language. There should be no discrimination between the Sri Lankan Tamil and Sinhala resident of Sri Lanka in government jobs and university jobs. Their religion should be equally respected with that of Buddhism and they should be given equal political rights. The struggle for their demands in the following ways. In 1980s, several political organizations were formed demanding an independent Tamil state. Sri Lankan Tamils launched struggle for the fulfillment of their rights. As a result, a civil war was proclaimed and thousands of people were killed when their legitimate demands were denied by the Sri Lankan government. Describe the vertical and horizontal form of power sharing exercised in India. Vertical distribution of power. Power can be shared among governments at different levels. A general government for the entire country and government at provisional or regional level. This is the federal form of government. When power is shared among governments at different levels, that is union or the central government, the state government and the municipality and panchayat at the lower level. This division of power involving higher and lower levels of government is called the or vertical division of power. The Constitution clearly lays down the powers at different levels of government. This federal division of power involving higher and lower level of government is also called the vertical division of power. For example, a key change in the Constitution of Belgium in 1993 was that the regional government were given constitutional powers that were no longer dependent on the central government. Thus, Belgium shifted from a unitary to a federal form of government. Horizontal distribution of power. Power is shared among different organs of government such as legislature, executive, and judiciary. This is horizontal distribution of power. It ensures that power is shared among different organs of government, the legislature, executive, and judiciary. It allows different organs of government placed at the same level to exercise different powers. In a democracy, ministers and government officials exercise power. They are responsible to parliament or state assemblies. The judges appointed by the executive can check the functioning of executive or laws made by the legislature. The horizontal distribution of power is also called the system of checks and balances. This system ensures that none of the organ can exercise unlimited power. Each organ checks the other. This results in a balance of power among various institutions. For example, in India, the judiciary has an independent status. The Supreme Court is the apex court of justice. The Parliament is the legislative body where the laws governing the country are made, and the executive is the implementing body. थैंक यू बच्चों. इसी के साथ ये क्वेश्चंस खत्म होते हैं. आपको इससे रिलेटेड कोई भी डाउट हो, यू कैन कॉल मी, यू कैन मैसेज मी.